welcome back to another episode of Cosmetology, Skin, Barbering, and Nail 101 Fundamentals. I'm Jason Russell, Cosmetology Educator. I'm here today to share with you a very important on the skin and its layers, the dermis, the epidermis, and the subcutaneous layer. If you would love to see this three-dimensional, beautiful representation of the skin using food come to life, please stay tuned. All right, students, let's look at some of the ingredients that we're going to need to create our skin layer sundae. First, we're going to be using a few pieces of cake. Keep in mind this can be cupcake. Also, you can buy small pre-made sponges at your local grocer. We will be using hot tamales, airheads, peanut M&Ms, plain M&Ms, a Reese cup, and also we will need cornflakes, as you can see here, for the toppings of our sundae. Once you gather all of these supplies, we'll be back to begin building our skin layer sundae. Well guys, I don't know about you, but I'm ready to make a mess. So we have all the ingredients set up aside here that we mentioned in our ingredients list, and we're ready to begin building our skin layer sundae. As we build each layer of our sundae, we're really going to see how it reflects the specific area of the skin inside of each layer. So we're going to begin with our very first layer inside of our skin sundae. Our food ingredients that are going to represent our first layer, which we refer to as the subcutaneous. So when we think of the subcutaneous is the lowest layer below the dermal layer of the skin, which gives our skin its sponginess or softness. It actually is a shock absorber. So the reason we chose cake today, because if you take a round piece of cake and it is spongy to represent that subcutaneous layer just below the dermis. So today in our sundae, we're going to work ourselves from lowest most point in the skin upward. So when we think about the subcutaneous, it's right on top of the bone. It gives protection and is a shock absorber. What's important about this layer of the below the skin is that it's filled with blood vessels, which help you really bring nourishment to our body. So if you would, take your red tamales, hot tamales, and press them inside of your layer of your subcutaneous. So when we get our subcutaneous layer, we'll be able to see those red blood vessels running through it to help us remember, hey, subcutaneous, spongy in texture, shock absorber, and it has blood vessels there. That goes in the lowermost point of our cup. So once you get it into the bottom, just like on the cooking channel, we have one, ta-da, already ready for you to make it easy. So now you can see our lowermost level there below the dermis, which is known as subcutaneous. Once we're in this, we have our subcutaneous in place. Just above the subcutaneous in the skin sundae is now going to be the dermis. The dermis, what is so important to keep in mind about the dermis is we're going to be using our airheads for this portion of the dermis. The reason being is because when we think about the dermis, this is where that very important elasticity of our skin comes into play. We know that younger skin is far more elastic and can bounce back. And as we age, especially if we're exposed to cigarette smoking, if we're exposed to the sunlight quite a bit, these elastin fibers begin to break down. So notice all of the stretchiness that's occurring right here in this airhead. Perfect tool to put right on top of our subcutaneous in our sundae, that way we can still be able to clearly see that we have our first lowermost point, subcutaneous, filled with vessels. And now we have our elastin fiber dermis that is going to be just on top of that. What's important about this area now, this is where we're going to start talking about where our skin's color and pigment begins to occur. So one layer subcutaneous, second layer dermis. Now we're going to look at the 5 layers of the epidermis, or uppermost skin layer. So total today, 7 different layers, 2 of the skin, subcutaneous, dermis, and now the epidermis. Guys, let's look at the bottom of the epidermis. When we think of it, I always like to think of God saves gracious little children. So we're going to start germinativum, spinosum, granulosum, lucidum, and the corneum. So God saves gracious little children. From the lowermost point up, we're going to work. Our first food that we're going to bring into our Sundae now is for the germinativum, or basal layer, you may hear it referred to. And if you look at an M&M, a peanut M&M for this portion, you're going to see that it's nice and round. The reason that the peanut M&M is important in this layer is because that's exactly what the cells are in this layer of the epidermis. They're nice and round, newly formed, they're brand new, therefore they're nice and plump as they are inside of this epidermal layer. So let's put us a few M&M layers in there so that we can really get a good three-dimensional view today. Look how beautiful that's looking. White for our dermis. Now the epidermis is beginning with those fresh, moist, round cells found in the germinativum or basal layer. Pretty cool, right? So what holds the next layer to the germinativum? So in between the germinativum and the granulosum, there's called the spiny layer. The best food that we can think of for spiny is, think about a Reese cup. Think about the serrated edges of a Reese cup. That's perfect for our Sundae today because it's going to represent that spiny layer. And notice when we place it into our Sundae, spiny layers facing up, what's going to happen is if this were actual skin, those spiny layers would then connect to the next layer above it. So germinativum, nice fat round cells where melanocytes and color are found in the skin. Now the spiny layer is going to help us connect to the third uppermost layer, which is the granulosum. Spinosum. Now when we go in with our flat M&Ms, the reason we chose the flat M&M today is because we began with a round, beautiful cell in the germinativum. But as it begins to move upward into the skin, these cells begin to flatten and lose moisture. We all know we get that dry skin on the outside edge. So somewhere below, it actually starts drying out. And that's what occurs here in this, the granulosum layer. So those will all go in on top of our spiny layer. And that will make up the full granulosum. So subcutaneous, spongy, supportive. Dermis, where the elastic is created to keep our skin tight. And then we begin the epidermis. Beautiful, wet cells, round and plump, held together by the spiny layer, then the granulosum, where the cells begin to dry out in that third uppermost layer. Now you'll notice there's one layer, little children, the L in little children for lucidum is missing in this specific Sundae. Because the lucidum is a layer that's only found like on the palm of our hands and the soles of our feet, not in the rest of our body where pores are present. So the lucidum is absent. That brings us to our last and top layer. So God saves gracious little children. Germinativum, spinosum, granulosum, lucidum, and now for the corneum. We use our cornflakes for the corneum layer because they best represent something that is dry and flaky. At this point in the skin's process, about 28 days, as it goes from those fresh, moist cells upward, they are slowly drying out. Once they reach the top layer, this is that crusty, dry skin that you and I see that needs to be exfoliated. So you see a beautiful three-dimensional representation now of your subcutaneous and dermis and the 5 layers of your epidermis. You can go ahead and eat this if you like. There's a lot of sugar involved in it, so it may give you a little bit of a jazz. From my home to yours, I really appreciate being here with you during quarantine. If you need any more information on the skin and its layers or any other topics you'd love to see discussed, please give me a call or an email. I'd love to hear from you. Have a great day.